week 4 of the Every Bit Counts challenge, which means August is almost over. I loathe summer and I love Halloween. Hopefully you'll like what I preserved this week. Alright, this is round number 3 with buttnut squash, and instead of puree, I'm gonna make canned squash. You cannot safely home can a puree, so you have to put it in large chunks. After you peel it, gut it, and then cut it into large chunks, then you want to boil it over medium-high heat for at least 2 minutes. You don't want it too mushy, but you want it cooked down a little bit. Then I'm going to hot pack these jars, which means the jars are hot or kind of warm, the liquid's hot, and the buttnut is hot. So I just fill it up to an inch headspace, and then I'll fill with water to an inch headspace. You can also add some salt if you want to, but I don't know what I'll be using this buttnut for. Maybe something sweet, so I don't want salt in there. Last of the buttnut squash right here, 4 quart jars. And these will process in the pressure canner for 90 minutes. Well, actually no, that wasn't the end of the buttnut. I saved a little bit aside to make pumpkin butter. Yum. I put it in the crock pot on high in about an inch of water just to steam it, and it worked pretty well. I didn't want to have the oven running, heating up the house, so 3 hours on high and it was pretty soft. After it was soft, I strained it out from all the water in there, and I put it in a bowl overnight because it's supposed to be stirred every 2 hours just so it won't burn on the bottom, and it has to cook for 6 to 8 hours. And it was already getting late. The next evening after farm chores, I grabbed the immersion blender because nobody wants to wash all the stuff in a blender or a food processor. This one's just so easy to clean. Because it was cold, it didn't blend all that well, but after it cooked down a little bit more, I hit it again with the immersion blender and it was smooth. I had to measure the puree with a cup just to make sure how much I had fit with the recipe, and I ended up doubling the recipe, which is going to be linked in the description below. I used light brown sugar, and to make it dark brown, I'm just going to add a little bit of molasses. And that is just because I prefer that taste. The recipe just says brown sugar. Then your typical pumpkin pie spice goes in there. A little bit of nutmeg, a little bit of clove, a little bit of ginger, a lot of bit of cinnamon. Oh, that smells like fall. And then I had to use quite a bit of lemon juice in here. It doesn't give it a lemony flavor or anything. Again, like I said, I wanted to make sure it was real smooth and good thing because I see some big chunks in there. And it helped it mix a lot better too with this immersion blender. Not a bad idea to do it twice. Then the lid goes on and you cook this on low for 6 to 8 hours, stirring every hour or so just to make sure the bottom doesn't burn. And you want that thick enough to pile up on your spoon and not run off. Then I was getting my water hot for the water bath canning portion because the butter's hot, so you don't want to put a jar of hot butter into cold water because it could crack. Obviously I'm going to water bath can mine despite what the national canning people say because I'm a rebel. But you can put it in the freezer for up to a year. You can put it in your fridge, but good luck getting through that much pumpkin butter unless you're just an addict. That's okay. That's okay. Right or wrong, I filled these to a 1/4 inch headspace and then processed them for 10 minutes in the water bath canner. I just followed the peach butter recipe canning instructions. On the pumpkin butter recipe that I used, she said she canned them for 45 minutes and then froze them. And I thought that was a little excessive if you're going to freeze them. So I just did 10 minutes and then put them in the freezer. I ended up putting them in the freezer. Congrats me for being safe, I guess. Whatever. I'll do something dangerous later. Because they're not a fruit. They don't have the acidity. But I did put a crap ton of lemon juice in it. So you decide. Alright, I needed another easy one, so I did a chocolate extract. You can add this to coffee or to muffins or anything chocolate, brownies. It just is supposed to enhance the chocolate flavor. The recipe actually calls for cacao nibs. This is ground cacao. It's supposed to be in place of kind of a coffee. And I just put the same amount. It's not going to hurt anything. It's just ground finer. So I put a half a cup in there. And then 8 ounces of whatever alcohol you're going to use. Make sure you have a label of some kind that you can put the date and when it's ready on there, or what it is if you're not sure. And then put it somewhere dark and cool for 3 months and shake it whenever you think about it. Then you can follow the rest of the directions in the description I'm going to put here, but we'll see how it turns out, whether I need to skim fat off of the top or anything. This recipe calls for 12 New Mexican peppers. It doesn't say what they are, and every time I googled it, these 3 came up. Guajillo, ancho, and arbol. Don't come at me, I took American Sign Language in high school. First, you need to blister the skins. These are all dried, so you're just trying to blister it. It kind of puffs up a little bit, but no more than like 5 to 8 seconds on each side. You do not want to burn it, because it'll give it a bitter taste. Once they're cool enough to touch them, take the stems off and dump out the seeds. There were quite a few, especially in these little ones. Then tear the pepper skins themselves into large chunks in a bowl that you can put boiling water in. Then, surprise, surprise, pour boiling water into the chili peppers and let them steep for 20 minutes. You're going to keep that water, so don't strain it all out. And then you mince up 4 cloves of garlic. This is from my garden, and some of them are teeny tiny, so I added a little bit more than 4, but a grocery store size 4, equivalent. And then you saute that for just a little bit before you add 5 cups of coarsely chopped onions, or about 4 large onions. The instructions say to use only about a cup of your soaking water. I needed more than that. The sauce was really thick, and I'm used to Old El Paso enchilada sauce, so I didn't want it to mess up my enchiladas, and I made it thinner. I also added about double the amount of chilies, so I had to go back and make more chilies because it had too much of a tomato taste, and I wanted to taste the peppers. I don't think I changed it that much to mess anything up. You can do your own research. Do what you're comfortable with. Anyway, it calls for 6 cups of diced tomatoes that later you go and puree. So I was like, I'm just going to use sauce. So I used some of my home canned sauce. Here's some dark brown sugar in there. I added all this to the chilies and the reserved liquid. In the pot behind that is the onions that were getting caramelized, so I was just waiting for that to happen, and I put all the rest of the ingredients in while I was waiting. So a little bit of salt, a little bit of chili powder, a little bit of cumin, and a little bit of red pepper. I used my crushed red pepper, it's cayenne's, and then some tomato sauce. Again, it says diced tomatoes and then to go back later and puree it, so there's no difference to me. Because you're also supposed to go back and reduce it down to thicken it. Here's those caramelized onions with the garlic in there, and then we're going to add all the rest of that stuff into it off the heat because we're about to blend it with the immersion blender. See there? And then it wants you to cook it down and thicken it, so there's no difference in the sauce and the diced tomatoes. Anyway, I've beat that dead horse. This is what I did. This is what it looked like after I added more water, more peppers, and I blended it again. So you want to fill it to 1 inch headspace, and it's going to process in the pressure canner for 50 minutes. Now you see how long all this stuff took me? Homemade enchilada sauce. It's going to taste so good. It took so long. This is going to be great. You see what I'm leading up to? Yeah, it exploded. A lid failure or me not tightening it enough? I don't know. Derek found this recipe. He really likes that southwestern corn, which is just basically corn and bell peppers. But we're gonna give this zesty corn a try. He helped me by shucking and decobbing the corn, and I got all the rest of the ingredients put together. All of these recipes are going to be linked in the description below, but most of them start with brown sugar, I guess, at least in my kitchen. And then this is apple cider vinegar. Because this is a vinegar base, I can water bath can this. This is mustard powder, which we don't love, but hopefully it's not a real mustardy taste. And then kosher salt. I used to say saltless salt, but those are big granules. And then some of my garlic that I minced up, and jalapenos, which I de-seeded out of the graciousness of my heart for my husband because he doesn't like things too spicy. I love spicy. And then we used some bell pepper that we had pre-chopped and frozen. And then our corn. This was brought to a boil and then allowed to simmer for 20 minutes before I filled it in pint jars, leaving 1/2 inch headspace. Then it was water bath canned for 15 minutes. It's not like you can have too many jalapenos, but we bought too many for that corn project. This is why we had to buy jalapenos this year. I got a few. Here's one right here. But this plant did not thrive. So I decided to make pickled jalapenos because I have plenty of candied jalapenos. I cut these pretty thick so they won't get all mushy in there, and I actually meant to put that crisping stuff you can buy for pickles in there, and I forgot. But I did get fancy and put some garlic in there. And because it was out, I used apple cider vinegar. You can use regular white vinegar if you want. I filled these to 1/2 inch headspace and then put the lids on. I'm using I'm using pints there. I was going to use 1/2 pints and I decided to use pints. These were water bath canned for 10 minutes and then you're supposed to leave them for 4 to 6 weeks so they can develop all the flavors. Pink ladies are my favorite apple. They're tart and sweet and crunchy. Anyway, I decided to dehydrate some of these to make apple chips. So here I'm just slicing it pretty thin. I'm going to say 1/8 of an inch. Stepping out into something different from 1/4 inch. And then I tried to use this to punch out oh, there's a hole in my shirt. Can't take me anywhere. Oh my gosh. Anyway, it was really hard to punch that out. So I just decided to cut out the middle. It ain't as pretty, but oh well. Cinnamon sugar's real hard to make. You grab some sugar and then cinnamon and you stir it around. I ended up adding a whole bunch more cinnamon to that, but make it how you want it. Pro tip, put a cup towel down before you put your dehydrator trays on there. I just didn't want sugar everywhere, so I put that down so I wouldn't have to clean up too much. I just gathered it up and put it in the sink. I took a long time kind of sprinkling it on top. Later I was dunking each sides in the sugar and it was way too much sugar. So sprinkle lightly, especially if you're using Pink Ladies. I think another blander apple like Red Delicious like my mom likes. Those are not delicious, but sugar will make it taste better probably. I put this on 225. You can also do this in the oven on 225 for like 45 minutes to an hour. But this dehydrator doesn't tend to heat up the house as much as the oven. And I think I can fit more on these trays than I could in the oven. I probably left this 2 hours, but in the words of my mom, oh, till it looks right. I'm storing these in a gallon mason jar. I'm probably going to vacuum seal some so Derek can take it on his hunting trip. Still 3 days left in the challenge, so make sure you subscribe so you can see those last 3. And I'm also going to talk about some of the successes and failures of this challenge. You can watch my other videos because it doesn't stop here. If you like this video, feel free to subscribe. I upload most Sundays and you can keep watching us grow our farm. Have a good one.